Hello and welcome to the AVForums Podcast, and we have a special edition today because joining myself and Steve Withers is James Thomas from LG UK. Hello, James.
Hi, Phil, Steve. Good to see you.
Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. We are going to talk about the 2021 LG TV lineup. We're going to get into it in some detail, but before we do that, some of our viewers and listeners will know you from previous videos from CES, which is what we're doing today. We're replacing our CES. We didn't have it this year, so this is our CES interview. But for everybody else, if you could just explain who you are, what your job is, and what you do.
So my name is James Thomas. I'm the product manager for the home entertainment division at LG UK. So I think the simplest way is just I'm the product guy. So it's my job really to help guys like yourselves and our customers, etc., to really understand our products and to know and understand why they're so great, really. And
it's been an odd year. Well, last year was a very odd year, and this year seems to be going down the same route as we speak at the minute. So how has that affected business for LG and the TV side of things and so on? What kind of year have you had? Has it been a good year, or have you had issues?
No, it's been a great year, actually. I think if you look at home entertainment industry in general anyway, given that people are spending a lot more time at home, people are naturally wanting to look to upgrade their home entertainment, whether or not it's their TV, their soundbar, etc. Anyway, because they're spending a lot more time sat in the living room. So, the industry and LG in particular, we're in good health at the moment. So it's been fine for us.
Okay, so we're looking at 2021. People are spending a lot of time at home at the minute. They're probably looking to upgrade their TVs. So why don't you give us a quick rundown of the TV lineup for this year for the UK?
Yeah, sure. Where to start, really? I mean, to talk about a hierarchy of our range, most people would be, I think, familiar with. Usually, we have the OLED part of our range and the LCD part of our range, effectively. Slightly changed this year, a bit of a new addition. So obviously, we still have OLED at the top, being our flagship technology, the pinnacle of picture quality. Just below that, now there is a new entry for us, which is what we're calling our QNED Mini LED lineup. So this is basically our ultimate LCD offering, really. Below that, then we have our usual nanocell range representing our premium LCD lineup, and then below that, our sort of standard LCD LED 4K UHD range as well. I won't go through each individual product right now, but I mean, to start with OLED, we'll have effectively a similar range that most people will be familiar with. So from the top down, we'll have our Z series model. Obviously, the product codes this year are changed. So we had the X last year representing, Roman numeral for 10 or for 2020 anyway. So now we're on to 1. So we have the Z1 at the top, our 8K model, which from last year design-wise is unchanged. So you have the 88-inch model, which is the floor standing one, and the 77-inch model, which is the one which is gallery design, but also can be, table mounted. Below that, we have our gallery series, our G1, which, design-wise is unchanged from last year. Still has a fantastic gallery design, very slim chassis, recessed wall mount bracket. So people who are wanting to wall mount their TVs, which is obviously more and more. Obviously, we know that the market is going towards bigger and bigger TV screens. People want bigger and bigger TV screens. And unfortunately, in the UK, our houses aren't getting any bigger, but wall mounting is a great way of getting a big screen into your living room. So that's why the gallery series is there. But obviously, the G1 this year also has something extra up its sleeve in the OLED EVO technology, which obviously we can probably talk about a bit more in detail later. Below that, we have our C1, which, as usual, is our where we introduce our best processor, the Alpha 9. Below that is our B1, which is difference there really being that it has the Alpha 7 processor, not quite so advanced as the Alpha 9. But the new entry at the bottom then is our A1. So that's our new entry OLED, which really is offering OLED to even more people. Difference with that model is that it's a 60 hertz panel as opposed to 120, which the rest of the OLED models have. So if you're someone who's into your movies and box sets, etc., it's obviously a great option. But if you want to step up because you are a gamer, you want to get the most out of your new Xbox Series X, for example, and enjoy 4K HFR, etc., then obviously you're going to want to step up to a B or a C. One other thing to mention as well, which is new within our OLED range, is that we have an 83-inch screen size for the C series. So, overall, when you look at that range, we've got more screen sizes, more options for customers to really get on board with OLED. Within the QNED Mini LED lineup, we have 2 models there, so there'll be a 4K and an 8K. And then obviously within NanoCell and UHD, we'll have a nice wide range of products with sort of tangible step-ups between models when you're looking at things like going from a quad-core processor to an Alpha 7 processor, or local dimming to full array dimming, etc., and Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, etc., all on certain models as well. So a really great lineup. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every individual NanoCell or UHD, but we've got a lot of different TVs to meet a lot of different price points and different sort of customer needs, I guess.
Okay, is it QNED or QNED?
It's QNED Mini LED is its full name. Yeah.
Okay, so what does the QNED stand for then? So
the Q is for quantum dot, and the N is for nanocell. So this is very new technology. Obviously, we've trademarked that name for us. We are very aware. We want to ensure that it is always QNED Mini LED, so people are aware of the Mini LED technology part of it. It is still effectively an LCD TV at heart, but our ultimate version of it, if you like. But yeah, it's the first time that we've married quantum dot technology with nanocell technology for basically the ultimate in the color reproduction, really, the way we've combined the two. Because obviously, I mean, as you guys very well know, to improve an LCD TV, there's 2 parts to improve. There's either the backlight or there's the LCD layer for the the color reproduction and resolution. So for these TVs, we're improving both areas. We're improving the color reproduction. So obviously, the rest of our nanocell range is still the existing nanocell technology that we use, but we have this new quantum dot plus nanocell for the QNED Mini LED products, plus the Mini LED backlighting system, which obviously gives us fantastic control of those backlights for better contrasts, reduced blooming, etc., and better blacks.
And what models fall under the QNED?
So we have a QNED 99 and a QNED 91. And basically, one's an 8K, the 99, and one is a 4K model.
And what other features do those sets have other than the Mini LEDs?
They are both 120 hertz. We'll have there's the Alpha 9 processor on the 8K model, Alpha 7 on the 4K, and then obviously a lot of the standard features you'd be familiar with, such as having Dolby Vision IQ, Dolby Atmos are there, and various different HDMI 2.1 features. For example, we have the RR on the 4K model, 4K HFR on both. And actually, when you look at HDMI 2.1, the features of ALLM and eARC are on those devices, and also every product in our range for 2021, even down to our lowest UHD model. So, if you talk about HDMI 2.1 features, we have them across all models, and then obviously the higher features such as VRR on different models.
Okay, so I guess our audience really focus on OLED. So you mentioned the hierarchy. So you're bringing in Mini LED QNED, but that's not top of the range, is it? You still see OLED as the ultimate in terms of picture quality.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, obviously we'll get great color reproduction from the quantum dot nanocell technology. But one other thing we're talking about this year with OLED is 100% color fidelity. And this is basically when we've done measurements of around 125 colors are measured from their perceivable color, what you see compared to what they should be. And basically they measure right below the accepted line of what is, where you can perceive to see a difference in color. So we know that our OLEDs are certified as well that the color reproduction on them is true, absolutely 100% true. And we know that LCD technology just can't reach that because of the backlighting system. But also with OLED, you know, fine with our Mini LED on an 86-inch model or 8K model, we're talking at about nearly 30,000 Mini LEDs making up the backlighting system. So nice and bright. They are subdivided, obviously, because of processing power, into around 2,500 dimming zones, which is a big number, which is fantastic. But if you compare that to an 8K OLED, you're talking about 33 million pixels or 100 million subpixels, which is, you know, way more than 2,500. So the control of those backlights or lighting, if you like, because, you know, each pixel lighting itself is its own dimming zone, means you get so much better control. You get basically no blooming. You get better color control, basically, because of each individual pixel lighting itself. So OLED picture we still see as the ultimate and the best you can get.
And you've been quite strict as well with your measurements. I had the briefing on Wednesday, and you're looking at a delta E of under 2, whereas certainly when we test the TVs in review-wise, we're only looking for a delta E of 3 or under, because obviously that's the visible threshold for most people. So you've really been quite strict with your measurements as well.
Yes, we have. We like to make sure that we're giving the best tech that we can, really.
Good. Right, so A1 60 hertz panel, are you able to give us prices, or can you give us an indication of where in the market you think
right now? That will come later. We'll announce that soon. So I can't really talk about pricing right now, but you imagine it sits below these, basically.
What about availability? When are these TVs going to hit the shops?
Availability?
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be any issues there, to be honest. I haven't heard of any issues at the moment.
But when?
Oh, when? Sorry. Yes, launching soon. I don't have all the dates. We will share that. I think very soon, probably next week.
Right. So. Okay. So let's have a look at the models in a little bit more detail. Obviously, OLED we'll concentrate on because in terms of our viewers, that's the where the greatest amount of interest is. And I think the one TV that stands out from your lineup, so let's go to that one first, is the G1. Now, in the past, your models, they've all used the same panel, and basically the differences have been in cosmetics. So when you've gone from the C to the G upwards, it has been the cosmetic changes, not necessarily picture quality. But there's a definite switch in terms of picture quality this year from all of the models. It seems to be you've gone from a step up at each level, and the G1 has a brand new panel, which is called EVO, which I guess is for evolution.
Yes, it is basically, yeah. I mean,
so maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the EVO panel then, and what makes it different.
Yeah, well, we're calling it EVO really because if you look at the history of OLED TV, 2013 is when LG introduced LG large screen TV to the market. A couple of years later was our first evolution of that, I guess, really, with actually introducing HDR, 4K. This year is the next evolution on that, really. And OLED EVO is what we, as LG, are calling it. And it's really a marrying of new panel plus our Alpha 9 processor, which has really been optimized to get the most also out of this new processor. So the new panel, I should say. So the new panel basically comprises of a new luminous element. But the main thing really is that we've got more precise wavelength control. So the wavelengths of blue and red and green are basically a lot narrower than before. So it's finer control, and it enables us to control that lighting system much more accurately. So you get basically what we're saying is our best OLED 4K, at least, picture out of that. So, you know, more precise wavelength control. Really, because of that, you get an improved brightness of the picture and improved sharpness, as you know, from a widescreen picture.
So, James, in the past, the panels have been WRGB. They've had a white pixel as well as RGB, and the white pixel has been there to obviously give it the brightness. So, if you're going for a brighter panel this time around, in the past, it's always been the white pixel that's been boosted to give it the extra brightness, and the color hasn't been there in terms of the peak brightness. Color tends to wash out a little bit. So does the EVO panel change the way that that happens? So it's not just the white pixel that's being boosted, but you're also changing, like you say, the wavelengths. You're changing the red, green, and blue pixel as well to add to that brightness and keep the color consistent.
Yeah, well, the blue pixel itself in this structure can be the peak of that is brighter, so that is helping to improve the overall brightness of the picture, basically. And
you mentioned some new compounds. So is that the organic mixture behind the panel? Is that what's being added there to help with the boost?
I don't have a lot of information on the exact sort of materials, but yeah, it's the blue material and red materials are new, but basically it's the luminous element which is the new part of the panel. I don't have full technical details on that to share, unfortunately, but yeah, they're parts of the new.
Yeah. So this has been one of the drawbacks with OLED, hasn't it? And it's been one of the things that you've had to fight against, I guess, in terms of the market position, because some manufacturers who are perhaps maybe LCD only have always pushed the fact that, you know, with OLED you're going to get burn-in, you're going to get retention, they don't go very bright, but that is a little bit disingenuous, isn't it? Because what OLED does have is the fact, like you said earlier on, 8.3 million pixels, and you can switch them on and off individually, which gives you that greater contrast. So is this what you're building on with the G1? You're building on the great black level by adding this extra brightness, better color uniformity to give a better overall image?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, really brightness is, I think most people are very happy with the brightness that OLEDs can get to. You know, if you're in a very, very bright room that you can't control the lighting of, then, you know, sometimes you may need to use an LCD for absolute brightness. But generally, in terms of picture quality, you know, that infinite contrast, if you like, between the brightness which we can achieve, which, as I say, most people find plenty, to the absolute black, that contrast really gives us this is the best picture.
So James, it's not only LG who are obviously talking about brighter OLED panels this year. Are you using the same panel that the competition will be using this year, namely Sony and Panasonic, who are also pushing this brighter OLED this year?
Unfortunately, I can't really talk to our competitors on what they're using. I've no information there to share on that one.
Okay, so the G1 looks great. I mean, I've got a G10 sitting behind me, which I've had here for a while doing different tests and so on. I've also a B10 sitting next to it as well. Beautiful design on the Gallery series, but one of the main questions has been, can it be desk mounted? Now, obviously, I've got it desk mounted behind me because it came with a separate box with 2 feet in. Is that going to be the same case this year with the G1?
Yeah, that is the same this year. So it comes with the wall mount in box, and those separate feet will be an optional purchase for those who wish to table mount, I should say, instead of a wall mount.
And if I want a gallery mount, this is new for this year, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is something we've also announced. It's called our gallery stand, which is a nice kind of different sort of designer feature, I guess. Yeah, for people who don't want to wall mount or even put it on a piece of furniture, have, you know, a nice space to have the TV maybe as, you know, as the focal point. We have this gallery stand, so that this is a stand which will be applicable or compatible with a number of different TVs, mainly 65 or 55-inch variants. But it's a nice freestanding stand. Basically, you can, you know, put it in the corner in your living room or wherever you want without needing a piece of furniture. It's very neat. Has cable management within it, and even a panel at the back where you can attach various sort of extra set-top boxes or whatnot. As well, so a really nice sort of designer accessory, which is obviously again another optional purchase.
And of course, it's not just the G1, which is what I didn't realize until the briefing we had on Wednesday. So it uses the Visa mount, so you could actually use it on any of your models, couldn't you?
Yeah, there's a limited amount of models that we can put it onto, but it is a wide range of wide range of our products at the moment. As I say, it's limited really to those screen sizes. I think mainly because obviously if you're going to try and put a an 86-inch model on it that it might not be as stable, I guess. But yeah, they're the ones that it's meant for.
And you mentioned there, I just wanted to pick up on it as well, because we kind of glossed over it a little bit, but you can connect items to the back of it as well. So you could put your set-top box and connect it onto the back plate.
Yeah. So there are sort of holes and that ability to sort of, if you wish to sort of connect other devices to the back, then you have a sort of nice, smart, neat system, really.
Yeah, because it was something myself and Steve discussed, didn't we, Steve, after CES? We thought, yeah, that stand looks great, but you're going to have wires everywhere. And how do you get rid of, do you have your DVD player or your Blu-ray player sitting underneath it and you've got cables and all? But actually the way you've designed it is that you could connect your player or your Apple box or whatever to the rear. Yeah. And then I guess the only cable you have running down the back and onto the floor is the power cable then.
Well, actually, even then, though, there's you can route the cable through the actual through the legs. So down the main part and into the rear leg, it's hollow, so the cable can be routed through there. So you'll just be poking out the back, nice and neat.
Yeah. One other question. I don't think you're going to give me an answer to this one, but the G1, what's the peak brightness then? If we're going for
we've not measured. We'll leave that to you guys. As I say, we're not really talking about going for a message of this is, really, really much brighter OLED panel. You can benefit from brightness and improved brightness and sharper pictures, but all that leads to basically our best OLED 4K picture.
Okay, so we've got the A1 that comes in 60 hertz panel. I noticed that you mentioned it wasn't for gamers. Now, obviously, with the 60 hertz panel, we're in a 50 hertz country. What issues do you think will be there for some users? Obviously, gamers, they're going to look at the higher model, but are there any other issues that you see with running a 60 hertz panel at that end of the market?
Not really. I mean, obviously, it's a way of us sort of expanding our range and opening up OLED to more consumers, because obviously the price benefit of that panel over the other ones above it. But as I said, really, there will be people who aren't gamers, who don't have the latest console or need 4K HFR or stuff like that. So for those people who are just movie fans, then obviously 50/60 hertz, 50 obviously is applicable for the UK, but what it can achieve is 60. But that is sufficient for that market. But yeah, if you are someone who wants to get 4K HFR and we support all three flavors of VRR as well, so HDMI, VRR, G-Sync, and FreeSync as well. You then want to step up a model.
Yeah. So let's step up then. So the B1, what makes that different to the B10 that's sitting behind me then? What's the difference there for this year?
Some improvements to the processor. It's still the Alpha 7 processor. So there'll be some tweaks in picture improvement and also in audio. So the upscaling of audio is improved year on year. So that's it for the processor, really. But, that could bring me on really to talk about other features across the wider range, such as updated Magic Remote. We also have our new WebOS UI, and the whole UI in itself has had a bit of an overhaul as well. On the subject of gaming as well, we have something called the Game Optimizer. So this is a menu which is accessible when you are, using your game console to basically tweak all the different settings pertinent to your gaming. So ensuring that the correct VRR is enabled, that you can choose different picture settings based on what type of game you're playing. So you can either have a standard mode, or you can have a mode which is dedicated to FPS games, which will boost the dark area so you can see someone who's sneaking about in the shadows. Or we have an RPG mode and an RTS mode as well. So for those games where you want to have more contrast in your character in an RPG, you have that. For real-time strategy games, you have better mid-level brightness, so better clarity and detail for maps, etc. Plus, as I say, other tweaks that you can make to the picture settings within that menu. So it really is, again, empowering gamers to get the most out of their new console, gaming PC, etc., to ensure that gaming experience is really second to none for us.
So you mentioned the new user interface and WebOS 6.0. Might be a good chance just to talk quickly about how that's different from the previous versions of WebOS. And also, I guess a question a lot of people will be asking, given what happened last year, will there be Freeview Play? And if not, will you at least have all the catch-up services this time?
Yeah, well, I'll address that one first. And yeah, I'm delighted to say that the partnership between LG and Digital UK, obviously guys who run Freeview Play, has been renewed this year. So we will have Freeview Play and all those services for 2021 models. So that's great news. For the WebOS part, yeah, it's a real overhaul for us. I mean, I think you guys are familiar with our WebOS UI, how they've been over the last few years, where pressing the home button on the remote gives you the row of apps at the bottom of the screen to very easily access. It's very slick interface, very quick and to access. But obviously, we know that there's a lot of different content out there, and the way people are accessing this content is different because, on top of the catch-up players, you also obviously have a multitude of different streaming services now, which a lot of people are subscribing to multiple of them. So of an evening, if you want to find something to watch, to flick between different apps all the time can be, I think, a bit strenuous. So our new WebOS UI, which we have an image of we could put on screen, basically is a full screen UI when you press the home button. So it will interrupt whatever you are watching. My personal theory, though, is that if you're pressing the home button to get to another app, you've probably finished with what you're watching. But it's enabling us to put all that content into one place. So when you press the home button now, you will still see the row of apps at the bottom of the screen, which you can edit the order of if you should wish to. At the top of the screen, though, you'll have different banners and boxes for search and for other information such as weather, etc. In the middle of the screen, there will be recommendations. So you have quick access to live TV from there, but also recommendations for content, which is based on your viewing history. So it will recommend different content which is personalized to you. But also then when you scroll down using the scroll key on the Magic Remote, you'll then straight away access all your different inputs, then more sort of frequently watched live TV channels. Things like Sports Alert will appear there, and then also all the recommendations from different content providers. So you can see on different rows, different content from different providers. So it just makes it much easier and quicker to find a piece of content that might be of interest to you, rather than flicking in and out of apps all the time. And that's the home screen. For the rest of the UI, we have had a bit of an overhaul of the menus. For you guys reviewing, it means you will have to learn a new menu, so sorry about that. But for all the guys buying a new TV, we feel it's a much more slick and joined up experience of the menus, where you want to find picture settings, sound settings, etc., whatever you want to tinker with, basically. That then obviously combines with our Magic Remote, which is worth mentioning. So the Magic Remote also has always been a real favorite amongst a lot of people, and that is, the functionality is unchanged. So we still have the mouse cursor on screen, which makes it very quick and easy to navigate that UI. You have the scroll wheel on the middle as well, which makes it easy to scroll through content, and obviously you have voice control, which is a great benefit of it as well. And we're building on that as well this year. So you still have the access to voice control with our ThinQ server. So if you want to speak into the remote and ask for a particular piece of content, change a particular channel, set an automatic timer, to turn the TV off when the movie you're watching ends, that kind of thing, TV control, that's all served up via that part of the remote, our ThinQ voice control. But we've now split out separate buttons for Google Assistant and Alexa as well. So if you use one or both maybe of those services, it's very quick and easy to access that service. So if you want to look for content, ask how long your commute is to work, etc., or control smart home devices that you might have all hooked up via those services, it's very quick and easy to do because we've got dedicated buttons for them as well. So the whole user experience, the UI, the remote, we've really, thought long and hard about and improved a lot this year, I think, to enable it to be very quick and easy for people to access, but also to get access to content, which is what you turn your TV on for in the first place. So I think we've got a winner on our hands.
You mentioned 2021 sets for Freeview Play. What about those people who bought sets this year, the 2020 models? Are they going to get the access to the apps?
We're working. We have iPlayer. We have ITV launching it's on live on some TVs, and the rest we're still working on those ones. So that's other conversations.
Okay, but you're not going to forget about people. You're going to do your best to try get them.
No,
yeah.
Definitely not. It's always very important for us to look after our customers.
So you've just gone through the new features in terms of WebOS and the user interface. What other things are there new on the C1 this year?
So C1, really, I think the main thing really to talk about would be then the processor. Being the Alpha 9 Gen 4, as is LG's way, each year we try and improve, add new features, etc. So no difference this year. We had the Gen 3 in 2020. Now we have the Gen 4 processor. Obviously, last year we had great things like obviously image optimization, but things like auto genre selection, so you can detect if it's a movie or if it's sports or even an animated movie, for example, and set the right picture settings for that. But some of the improvements we have this year are things like improved object detection. So last year we could detect a face on screen, which obviously is usually the focal point when you're looking at content, and boost the sort of the brightness and clarity, sharpness of the face. This year, though, it can go one better. It can detect sort of objects in the form of someone's complete body, animals, vehicles in the middle of the screen, etc., and really enhance those parts of the picture. It also has scene detection now as well. So it can detect whether or not, generally you have a standard kind of setting, but also there'll be one for a cityscape. So if it's a city scene, then with lots of large buildings, it can detect that and give you better clarity of that kind of scene. If it's generally sort of nature scenery, again, improve it, and even a night scene it detect as well. So give you sort of better detail in the darker areas, etc. That's the sort of the picture quality improvements. On top, obviously, as we always year on year work to just improve the general picture quality. Sound side as well as taken care of by this processor. So we have improved upscaling of audio. Last year, it could take a stereo input and upscale it to a 5.1 virtual sort of surround effect from the TV speakers. This year, we're going one further to a 5.1.2. So we're adding the height channels to give you an even more immersive sound experience. Plus, it has something called auto volume leveling. So if you flick between channels or you flick between apps, generally, especially with YouTube, where not all YouTubers will have a consistent, volume, you'll easily go from one channel or service provider at one particular volume level and go to the next and have a big spike in volume, or it goes too quiet. So what auto volume leveling does, it keeps it nice and consistent. So the volume you set it at originally, it's going to keep it at that level and do a great job of doing that, bringing up, boosting quiet noises and bringing down the sort of big boomy shocks that you might have when an advert comes on or something like that. So they're the main things that sort of the new benefits largely from the processor.
James, just want to bring it on to HDMI 2.1 features. It's something which gets discussed an awful lot on the forums. People, deciding whether to buy a TV or not based on HDMI 2.1 and the capabilities of the sets. Could you briefly go across the range where things do differ in terms of 2.1, and can you explain why all LG sets except the 8K models do 40 gigabits per second instead of 48 gigabits per second?
Yeah, sure. Focusing on the OLED range for this, basically all except the A1 have the HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, because obviously with the A1 being the lower refresh rate panel, it's not so required. But all of those models have, talking of VRR to begin with, we have all three flavors, as I mentioned before, of VRR. So you have the HDMI 2.1 VRR, you have G-Sync, and you have FreeSync. You also have ALLM, and you have eARC. So they're sort of the main, obviously, parts of that technology. And And we are still very, very strong in our offering of HDMI 2.1 to consumers, because pretty much all of our top models have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. Some have, well, I should say bandwidth ports. Some have 2 high bandwidth ports, which can support 4K HFR, and the other then are effectively HDMI 2.0, if you'd like. But we believe that, especially in this world where some lucky people out there might have been able to get both of the new consoles if they got in very, very, very quick. And, people that diehard gamers might also have a PC, gaming PC hooked up as well. Plus you want to enjoy eARC to your soundbar. So having multiple HDMI 2.1 ports, or rather that, ports that support things like the higher frame rate or higher data rate, is very important. To answer your question about the 48 versus 40 gigabits per second, really, you only need the 48 gigabits per second for the 8K models. If you look at a 4K model, it's only when you're talking 12-bit signal that you need to go up above 40. And in our experience and tests, if you're looking at a 12-bit sort of picture on a 10-bit panel, you will see no difference to the normal 10-bit picture. So there's no benefit really to having 48 gigabits on a 4K model like this, a 10-bit panel. So given that there's no benefit of it, and there's very few sources that will output it like that, we're better using that the processing power, etc., to push that back through the processor and ensure that we get the best picture quality we can possibly get. So we've taken a very informed decision. There's no real need to have 48 gigabits on particular models. Hence, we have the 40 gigabits instead.
And mentioning 8K, we haven't mentioned it. So is 8K a viable market at the minute, or do you feel that you have to have an 8K model in your lineup, but really the focus is still 4K and improving the 4K sets?
Well, I mean, we do see that 8K will grow. And I think it's still very, very much worth it to have an 8K part of our range. There are, a few customers out there who do want to move on and move up to get the 8K image. I mean, yes, it's still very early days. Content is very thin on the ground, obviously, in terms of 8K. But what we do with our 8K models is, try and ensure they are as future-proofed as possible. So they have those 48 gigabits per second HDMI 2.1 ports. They have the codecs that will be required for 8K content. So, people were covered when it starts to come more and more. But yes, the market is still very much 4K. So we have models to meet the requirements of the 8K. People who want that. But very much you can see from our range, really, the 4K is still where it's at.
And just to wrap up, really, we mentioned earlier on about image retention, and we've been talking a lot about gaming today. The sets really are set up, some of the best on the market actually for gaming in terms of flexibility, connections and all the rest of it. But obviously the elephant in the room is still this image retention and people talking about it online. What assurances can you give somebody that's looking at perhaps an OLED TV for gaming that that's not going to be an issue? They're not going to suffer from burning and so on when it comes to using an OLED? Well,
for us, first of all, I think, as you say, the benefits of OLED for gaming really are clear in terms of, the faster refresh rate, so the response time of the panel inherent to it, and all the features that we certainly carry in our range. In terms of image retention, yeah, I mean, we've always had advanced tech to mitigate this issue as much as possible. And under normal use, I think we still see it as not being really an issue.
Well, James, image retention is something that's going to get, it's going to get discussed on and on and on, unfortunately online and on forums and so all the rest of it. But certainly in my experience, and again, I'm not bigging up LG in any way, it's just through experience of reviewing them and torture testing the TVs. I think it's very, very rare that you will see image retention that sticks around, or burnt in image retention. If you put a pattern up on a high brightness pattern on the TV and you leave it for 10 minutes, yes, you will see the retention there, but it disappears after maybe an hour or so. It'll be gone. And I think the other main thing that we need to mention to people as well, maybe you can explain this a little bit, James, is that you have to let the TV go into standby properly so it can run the mitigation. If you switch it off at the wall, you're not allowing the TV to do that, are you?
That's exactly right. Yeah. After a certain accumulated amount of hours of watching, plus whenever you turn the TV off, you will get a cycle which does work to sort of it's called pixel refresher, basically. So it's one of those technologies which helps to keep the TV working nicely. But yeah, you do only get that obviously by pressing it into standby, not just pulling the plug out.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I think we've covered everything so far anyway for the 2021 models. I guess the only thing now is for us to get our hands on them and test them and measure them as well. I'm really interested to see how the G1 will perform with the EVO panel. It's got me excited, actually. I'm really looking forward to having a look at that model. So thank you very much for your time, James. It is appreciated.
Well, you're very welcome.
And my thanks also to Steve Withers. Thanks for your company, Steve.
You're welcome, Phil.
And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Plus, you can hit the notification bell to be informed every time we publish a new video. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news, and videos. And of course, if you've been listening to the audio-only version, you can also leave us a 5-star rating on whichever service you use if they allow it. Please give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed the show. Also, if you'd like to support the AVForums podcast and the work that we do here, then you can become a patron. You can do that by heading over to patreon.com/AVForums, or you can donate via streamlabs.com/AVForums. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for your company and watching us today. And join us for the weekly podcast on Wednesday at 7 p.m.